Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." This is the gospel of the Lord.
You guys aren't that good at it. That's okay. So tonight we have our special guest, Matt Rochester. And the reason it's so special, you know, we talk about the mission, and listen, we are all on mission together. And I try and say this over and over again. Pastors are not better than anyone else, okay? You guys already know this. What'd you say? Just their kids are better. Well, have you met mine? I don't think so. But pastors have a different role in the church, right? And right now in our seminaries, we have a real shortage of pastors. We have an expanse of ways now that you can become a pastor. We know that Deacon Jake is going through a distance route leading to ordination called the specific ministry pastor route. It works perfect because he is rooted here in Southern California. His family, it works great. For Matt, it works well for him to be sent off. But we know that comes with a challenge as well because his family, his church family is here. So there's still a loss for that. And it's a huge loss for us because we are really going to miss him. But before we get all sappy and sad, will you please join me in welcoming Matt Rochester up here? So before we dig into all the great stuff that we have prepared, can you tell us a little bit about your history here? You know, I asked you when we were up here, I said, "Were you baptized here?" And he said, "No." I was like, all right. You were baptized at Grace, which is like the Cathedral Church of San Diego, I've heard.
Yeah, pretty much. I think when I went through the application process for seminary, I had to have my baptismal certificate. I don't know if I had to have it, but that was part of one of the questions they asked you, and I think I was baptized 4 days old at Grace Lutheran Church here in San Diego.
4 days old?
Yeah.
That's dedication. Good job.
That is having a pastor grandpa. You know?
I've heard that St. Peter asks that when you get to heaven.
Yeah.
Your spot is dependent on how close to birth you were baptized. It's a joke. Okay. All right. So how did you end up here at Christ Lutheran?
Yeah, I was born and raised here. So I went to preschool through 8th grade here. This has been my home church basically my whole life, other than going off to college and, you know, those times where I was physically away. So yeah, went preschool through 8th grade here, went to Grossmont High School, and then freshman year of college, I was recruited as a volleyball player in high school, recruited to play volleyball out in Missouri, and so spent a year out there already, and ended up coming back home for sophomore year, went to Grossmont College for a year, and then finished junior, senior year at Concordia in Irvine.
Okay. And that's where you went back to do your master's degree as well, right?
No, actually, undergrad I finished at Concordia, but then over COVID, I went to GCU, Grand Canyon University.
Yeah, it's another Christian university.
Right, correct.
What was COVID?
I don't know.
Never
Something
mind.
in the past, who knows? Definitely won't
right.
talk about it for years to come. You know?
All right. So over the last few years, you know, as you're a working professional, you're well established here in Southern California, you are a well-educated man, you have been very involved in a number of things. I mean, Young Life, you've been very involved with our senior high students here. You lead pickleball, and you kick my butt every time, which is why I've quit coming. You were involved in so many different things. What led you to that? I don't know, how did you feel that call to that area of service?
Yeah, I think when I graduated college, my undergrad in 2019, I immediately the first thing I wanted to do is start getting into coaching. I had so many great mentors and people that had spoken to my life all throughout it, many of which were coaches, and I wanted to be that person, that mentor, that coach to kids in high school, and that's where I think that first original spark started for me to really start putting myself out there.
How has it been? I mean, do you find high schoolers to be an easy crowd to work with?
It's funny, I do love that age group. They're so...
That's not answering my question.
They are so abrasive at the start, but then once you really get to know them and build that relationship, man, there's some of the coolest people that you can get to know at a very unique time in their life.
How has it been to build trust with them? Because it's really hard. I mean, anyone who has a high schooler knows that there's probably, they start pulling back at times, or there's a different relationship than when that high schooler was a child. How have you been able to build trust in a different way than those kids have with their parents or with their teachers?
Yeah, I have a 3-step process, and I feel like I'm giving away trade secrets here tonight, but for the purpose of this, I'll let it slide. But first,
we'll double what we're paying you.
Thank you
for tonight. Yeah.
So the first thing I do is you have to talk smack to high schoolers. You have to be sassy with them. You have to really, give what they give to you right back to them, and really kind of put yourself on their level in a lot of ways. And once you're kind of there, you're on their same level, you just show up. What I've really come to realize through these last 6 years is a lot of kids just don't have adults that show up in their lives. And you can tell that they long for it, they need it, but it's just so common now. I was just talking to one of my former players last week about one of his teammates who, in the middle of his senior season, had his dad walk out on him and his family. And I was telling him, I said, nothing to take away from his story, but that's common now. Like, you see things and situations like that so common with that age group that they don't have stable adults in their life that stick around. And then the third thing is you just let them be kids. I mean, I think if you talk to any working adult, you ask them how life is, how their job is, and like, oh, my job stinks, man, I live for the weekend. It's like, why are we trying to rush high schoolers to get there? Like, truly, like, let them be kids. Like, let them live the life that they want. And, there's a time for mentoring and maturing in those situations, but the important thing that helped really build that rapport is to let them be themselves. Let them be kids and live where they're at in their life and not rush them to the next stage.
I love that. You mentioned step 2. You talked about where high schoolers are today. I was just thinking about how many studies have been done in recent years, kind of talking about how this upcoming generation is the most anxious generation. I mean, there's a book on that, and how they are showing the highest rates of depression, some of the highest rates of suicide. You have all of these things happening to this young generation, and it's crazy because they are the most connected people, right? Constantly on their phones, the social media, they've got everything. They're very connected, and yet they are also the most disconnected people. And Jesus' words from Matthew that we heard tonight, especially when he says that they're like sheep without a shepherd, I feel like really apply to this and apply to this generation. How do you see that, and how is your heart for them been influenced based on what you've seen? And you've talked a little bit about that already, but as you've seen them as sheep without a shepherd, what have you done to help them to be that shepherd?
Yeah, if I would change one thing about what you just said, I wouldn't say that they're sheep without a shepherd. I would say that in this day and age, with how connected they are with social media and the internet, they're sheep with too many shepherds, and they don't know which one to follow. And
did you hear that? They all went,
yeah, I know. That was good.
Yeah. They never do that when I preach.
But I think it's true, because the more you talk to kids, you find out really how many different things, ideas, people are trying to pull at their life. And you can tell that they're desperately searching for some sort of higher meaning. They're searching for truth, and what I've tried to do is point them to the truth, and do that in ways of volunteering. I have the opportunity with Young Life, the organization I volunteer with, to twice a week I'm on campus. I was on campus this morning. We have a Bible study at 7 a.m. that we do before their first period. And then Thursdays, we are there every lunch period. We run kind of like you say crazy circus is what we have here for our children's message. We have basically a half an hour to put on a whole youth group event over their lunch period, where we play a game with them, we give them a short talk about some story in the Bible, and then give them pizza and then send them off. And so those are kind of some of the ways that I've found that I've been able to go and connect and spread that truth.
One of the things that I find so inspiring about you is that you are so dedicated to that as a young professional with a big boy job, first of all, I've never heard you complain about work and say I can't wait for the weekend, which is pretty cool. But you've remained so dedicated to these students in a variety of different ways, and you've remained dedicated to sharing with them the love of Jesus, and to listening to them, and to being there for them in their worst times and their best times. And so as I'm thinking about that, is you're already engaged in this service, which is truthfully a lot more than most of society is. Why are you leaving San Diego to go to the seminary?
Hopefully not there. Hopefully that's not where I'm going yet.
Why? You're already doing so many good things with your life right now, and I would guess that you are probably making more money doing this job than you will, after seminary. That's just a guess. So what led you to this decision? How did you go from point A to point B in making this choice?
Yeah, I think...
And you can't say the Holy Spirit. I get that, okay?
It's the easy way out.
It's the easy answer.
I think for me, it was actually a pretty quick discernment period. It didn't take me very long to, once the idea was brought up, to kind of say, you know what, I think this is what's right for me. And I think to understand why, you have to kind of hear a couple of stories. One being how I originally started getting into Young Life, and two, how I got plugged in here at this church. The first story being when I had graduated my undergrad, 2019, I came home and was living at home with my parents. We just moved, and I'd been, like any recent grad, applying for every single job I possibly could out of college. And for months after sending off so many applications, absolutely nothing back, I was just on social media and saw a buddy of mine who was the current Young Life leader at Grossmont at the time was just posting, hey, we need help volunteers for snack bar for football games on Friday nights. And I was like, yeah, well, I guess I'm an unemployed single adult on a Friday night, got nothing better to do, just do it. And so I showed up, and...
Did you get free snacks?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. Well, it's not volunteer if I get paid for it, even in snacks.
All right, go ahead. I mean, I don't understand this decision-making process, but...
And at the end of the night, my buddy approached me. He said, hey, you connect really well with these high school kids. They really are responding to you. You should think about volunteering. And I said, yeah, maybe at some point, but I really, my priority right now is I need to get a job, and then after I do that, I'll think, see what time I have and think about it. And so more weeks, months went on, when more job applications that I turned in, had nothing back from, and so in a week I would go back and volunteer, and after every night my buddy would say, hey, you should really think about volunteering. So after the third or fourth time, I said, maybe this is something I need to think more about, something I need to pray about. And so I did, and I felt the Lord saying, yeah, do it, go. Use your time to do this. And so that was on a Friday where I told my friend, yeah, let's do it. I'll volunteer. And true story, following weekend, the next Tuesday, I'm getting ready to go to Helix High School for a lunch club on Tuesday afternoon, and I get a phone call from a random number, and it's from a company offering me an interview. The only company that reached out to me the entire, 4 months that I was sending off applications. And I interviewed with them that next day, got the job, and that's kind of where I've been in that same industry ever since. And it was really a eye-opening experience for me that really I felt the Lord saying, look, I need you to be aligned with what I want you to do, and I will take care of the rest. No matter what it is, whether it's a job or any situation in life, I will take care of it. I need you and your heart to be in the right place to pursue what I need you to.
I mean, this lines up really well with some other themes that we've talked about, which is being able to release control, which is really hard. It's like letting go of something or letting go of our tight grip on things, which is not an easy thing for us to do. We see these bumper stickers, let go and let God. I do not like those bumper stickers, but that's kind of, that's what you did.
Yeah, it's surrendering heart, I think, is the big lesson that I learned out of that situation for sure. And the second story is really kind of how I got plugged in here, was when I was a senior at Concordia, the fall, I volunteered with the Cal State Fullerton women's volleyball team and was assistant coach with them. And just had a miserable time. It was so bad. The team was terrible. There was so much drama, and I was like, I am never coaching girls ever again. This is awful. Awful experience. This is a true story. You're going to think I'm making this up, but we had someone on that team climb a tree to the third story of a dorm to break into the dorm and steal a scooter.
Who hasn't done that?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Just a normal occurrence.
Been there.
But it was just a team that was just riddled with so many problems. And I'm like, it just kind of burnt me from doing that. And then after COVID, 2021, one of my good friends who I've known for a long time, who I went to Grossmont, played volleyball with, reached out to me, said, hey, we're looking for a freshman girls volleyball coach at Grossmont. And I was like, absolutely not. There's no part of me that wants to do any of that. And he kept on me for, a few weeks, just saying, hey, it'd be awesome if you're here. We need you to do this. And eventually, I, again, kind of got to that same point of like, man, Lord, is this really something you want me to do? And if it is, I'll do it. And kind of felt that pull, that urge to do it. And so I said yes, and we started the season. And our first preseason tournament was at Valhalla High School, and I was just running everywhere, kind of trying to figure stuff out as the brand new coach here and talk to other coaches and do all this stuff. And right before our game, this big dude with a beard and a surf shop hat came up to me and shook my hand and said, hi, my name's Stuart. I'm Stella's dad.
Just going to say that. Yeah.
and said, nice to meet you, went on our way. And I was like, who was that guy? And, that goes to show that, like, this was my home church for my whole life, but how little I was plugged in here that I didn't know who Stuart was. Everybody knows who Stuart is. But after that season...
just real quick, there was a day where I saw someone on the cameras. We have cameras all over the campus, and it was raining, and he had a jacket on, and I ran outside because I thought it was a transient person. And nope, it's Stuart, so love you. So I get where you're coming from is
right.
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And so as that kind of season went on and I grew closer to their family, he kept kind of handing me hats and said, hey, you want to work coffee shop in the morning on Sundays? You want to, confirmation small group leader, you want to do that too? And, senior high, they got a, opening for some volunteers. And so that's kind of how I really got plugged into here to doing all these things. And pickleball now, like you said, and it all started with something that I desperately did not want to do. And I think that was another just moment in my life where, and absolutely that was one of the most fun teams I've ever coached in my career. Absolutely love those kids, and which are seniors now, which is crazy. It was 3 years ago. And we have somebody on that team who for 3 years I've been working on, and has recently, just this year, started coming to our Young Life clubs at lunch and hearing stories of Jesus for the last, 6-7 months. And so that decision of me doing something I didn't want to do has led to someone getting to hear the gospel they probably have never had before.
That's awesome. So it's a series of, spirit-led. That's what it comes down to, right? I said that you couldn't answer with that, but that's what it is, saying yes to the Spirit who is leading you down to all these decisions that you really didn't necessarily want to say yes to. And now here you are, and you're saying yes in this big way. And here in the fall, you're going to move to St. Louis, Missouri. And do you know how hot it is in August?
Well,
it's not like San Diego, buddy.
So I'm trying to learn Greek now, so I don't have to move there in the summer and find out how hot it is in the summer.
What was the hardest decision about going?
Probably the realization that I couldn't wear shorts to church anymore.
This is the first time I've ever seen him in pants.
I think as I've reflected on it, and we've had conversations about it, I think the hardest part of making this decision was the relationships that I'm leaving behind. Having to break the news to one of my players who's a junior this year, going to be a senior next year, that I'm not going to be there for their senior season. And to have to break that news and have her start crying, then I start crying, and then just, that's the hard part, is leaving the people. The material objects, the house, the job, all those things are so secondary to the relationships that I've built with people. And that's what I figured out that I'm going to be mourning the most as I leave.
What are you excited about with seminary, with being a pastor, if you make it through, right?
Yeah, I think, that when I started volunteering, and that really kind of lit the spark and the fire in me of really enjoying reading Scripture and being able to teach Scripture, obviously to kids in my situation, but I am excited to be able to get a firmer grasp on the meaning of Scripture and be able to teach it at a more deeper level. And just really, this is the first schooling in my life that I think I'm actually excited to go to. No offense, Ms. Schwartz. But truly, I have found a passion for learning theology and wanting to teach it.
That's great. So not everyone in here is called to, or, not everyone in here is called to be a pastor. And even some who were, maybe not be equipped or in a season of life to move to the Midwest to do that. But we all have a place, right? In the new member class this week, we talked about the church and how every single Christian has a role in the church. And we talked about 1 Corinthians 12. We are one body with many members, and every single person has a role in the body of Christ. What would be your encouragement to this group of people and to anyone who is maybe struggling with what they're supposed to do, or struggling with taking the next step in service and kind of hesitating with that? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I actually just had one of my high school players who's trying to discern how she wants to be involved in some sort of ministry, and she was asking me that same question. And what I told her was, everybody's path and everybody's callings are different. There's not one that is the same, but they all start in the same place. They all start with a surrendered heart and then the courage to take the step. It starts with a step, even if that step ends up being in the wrong direction. A step in the wrong direction, a step in faith, is still better than being idle. And so my advice to anyone is take that step. And even if that first step starts in prayer of saying, Lord, where do you want me? Where do you want me to be? What do you want me to do with the skills that you have given me? But whatever it is, take that step towards wherever you feel the Lord is calling you.
That's a great, I would tack on to that. This is someone kind of asked me the same question that I just asked you on Sunday. And they said, how do we know our purpose, whether it be in the church or in the world? And I was like, well, that's a super deep question. What is my purpose in life? And I said something to the effect of, you start by serving people. If you don't know where to go in life, start with serving people and go from there. And then, what do you have the calling for? And then do you have the capacity to do it, and is the opportunity there? Those are all important things, because you may feel like you have the calling for something, but not necessarily the capacity to do it. I could feel like I want to be an astronaut. I'm not going to be an astronaut.
Don't want to learn Russian?
No.
No. Greek and Hebrew are enough, huh?
And I've already forgotten most of that. Yeah. So it's all those things matter, but at its core, serving people, I think, is really where it starts. And Jesus taught us that.
Yeah, identify what skills you've been given, and that's your starting point. And then be ready to be moved somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. As we wrap up, is there anything else you would like to tell this group that's going to be praying for you as you head off soon? And we're going to, send you off in a bigger way, obviously. But is there any final thoughts that you have, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, I think the encouragement that I would offer is my story and journey to St. Louis this fall started with me doing something I didn't think I was qualified for and something I didn't want to do. I can draw a direct line from those two decisions to where I'm sitting right now. And the only difference to me sitting in this chair and sitting in that chair is I said yes. I said yes to the call that I feel the Lord is putting on my life. And that doesn't make me special in any way. That just means I surrendered my heart and then had the courage to take that first step. And so that's what I guess I would want to leave. The advice I'd want to leave is listen, pray, and then take that first step.
I think that is great advice. Will you please join me in thanking Matt Rochester for his time?